let's dip in the discussion on the People's Democratic Party as two top-notch Arise News analysts, Mahmud Jega and Sam Amadi, join us in the studio. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us tonight on the news. Let me begin with you, Mahmud Jega. We listened to Gov.Ortom, who's the head of that committee, zoning committee, say a unanimous agreement has been reached on the matter. However, he did not disclose the position of the committee. A report is to be forwarded to the NEC of the party, who would then release it to the public. But do you think this is a good sign? Does it mean that it is open to everyone? And if it is, who benefits from this?
Well, thank you. The Arise report said they are going to leave it open, even though Gov.Ortom did not announce it. But the fact that, as he said, the decision was unanimous really points in that direction. You see, there are many reasons. I agree entirely with what Mahmud said on Arise this morning. Number one, you have left the decision until very late. Secondly, the PDP put the cart before the horse, because you ask people to start buying forms before you decide on the zoning. And people bought these forms from all aspirants came up from all over the country and bought this 40 million naira form. Now, it is very difficult to come later on and say we have zoned and you are no longer eligible to contest. Also, when you set up a committee made up of 37 members, one from each state and the FCT, honestly, the only possible thing they can agree on is to throw the race wide open, because I don't see a representative. Everybody is representing the aspiration and hopes of his state. There is no way there is going to be agreement to zone the presidential ticket to one part of the country. So the most likely thing they will agree on is to throw it open. In any case, they have left the decision until late and they have put the cart before the horse, so there is almost no other option at this stage.
Right, and let me go to Dr. Amadi, who is in our offside studio. Well, Dr. Amadi, let's talk about the implication of this decision. Of course, we're still waiting for them to actually send that report to NEC. I was, privileged to be a part of that meeting today. You could see the long faces, especially from those from the southeast, looking at the governors and other members of that all-important zoning committee meeting. But the implication of this decision to throw it open on the southeast, who have not just been clamoring for zoning, but micro-zoning the presidential ticket to the southeast?
Well, I think it's going to be a bit of disappointment to those who genuinely feels it should come to the zone. But let's not forget that some of the governors, like the governor of Benue State, the governor of Abia State, are being reported to kind of, supporting Governor Wike and not necessarily the Southeast. So among the governors and some of the leading members, it would be much disappointment. But among the ordinary party leaders, they will feel disappointed. But the bigger story here is that PDP perhaps has prepared itself for a more cohesive campaign. Like everyone has said, this is too late to deal not just the reform or fees for form, but managing the expected acrimony disappointment that will arise from this very much debated zoning. For example, the North feels that, going by the history of PDP, that they deserve to have the power zone to them in PDP. The Southeast feels so, the South and so forth. So it needed some time for after zoning, before people begin to campaign or aspire for party leaders to go and manage the fallout. So we are faced with a situation where, because of INEC's schedule and the parties had to start selling form, you had no time to deal with the conflict management that's supposed to arise. So basically, it's like a default mode. The solution was default. You have to open it up, and I think there'll be disappointment, but then the party structure is like a big elephant. The party leaders can find a way to mitigate the disappointment of the Southeast or any other zone. Party politics requires creativity in expanding the pie. Win-win. So you could look at, I've always said, look, shared power. The presidency is the big elephant in the room. But beside the president, there are a lot of things. And PDP has a history of sharing power and accommodate everybody. So I guess
Dr.
the challenge
Amadi,
for the chairman will be, what should we do?
Indeed, we'll come to that PDP history on zoning. Let's take a quick break on Newsnight. We'll be back to discuss some more. Stay with us.
Welcome back. You're still watching Newsnight here on Arise News. And earlier we did tell you that party sources have confirmed to Arise News that the opposition PDP have now decided to throw the presidential ticket open to every geopolitical zone. And of course, our in-house analyst, Dr. Sam Amadi, as well as Mahmud Jega, they're still in the studio with us and having this conversation. Well, Dr. Sam, you were about to make a point, really, where you were talking about the politics of the PDP and the fact that the North say they have, you know, the opportunity right now, looking at how we've seen more southern presidential hopefuls come from the PDP and even make it to Asa Villa. They're saying it is the time for the North. But the question is, in a situation where we're seeing party politics, you know, contradicts the politics of Nigeria, looking at all the clamors for particular zones to produce the next president of Nigeria, which really should supersede party politics over the politics of Nigeria?
Well, I think both of them can be converged. For example, the ruling party, the APC, is a party that's in power, has a responsibility to throw it to zone to the south, because 8 years, in the rule of immediacy, recency theory in behavioral science. People are recently saying, oh, Buhari is in power, is a northern Muslim. So the next should go to the south. But for PDP, they can argue validly, like, look, within their own party, and they've been out of power for the past 8 years. The last they had was actually a southern president. And so the question is, if you look at the 10 years or so, or sorry, 8 plus 5 and 6, and 2 of Yar'Adua, the question is, why should we not consider ourselves as people who have a right to vie for this office? So it's more difficult for PDP to settle this question on issues of justice, unlike APC. And so one can argue both ways, and that's why perhaps at this point the party leaders consider it more important and more strategic to maybe prioritize winning election more than the nicety, quote unquote, of zoning. So you have to converge for PDP both the national question and the party concern, because zoning primarily is a party business. The Nigerian Constitution does not talk about zoning, but parties create it as a tool of responsive politics. There is a national consensus and the constitutional requirement of shared power. We talk about federal character. But on the matter of zoning, it's episodic and responds to contingencies of national politics. And so the parties are the ones who have the right to define these contingencies and how best they can respond. So for PDP, yes, zoning is part of their tenets, but they can argue that right now we could go 2 ways. You can say, okay, zone, microzone to southeast, or you can say zone to the north that has not done enough. But again, don't forget, even in PDP constitution, there's no division between north and south. It talks about zoning to the zones, rotation of power. So the argument has always been, look, are you talking about the 6th geopolitical zone or the north-south only? So I guess it's convergence of party politics and national politics. And for PDP, they want to get back to power more than they want to zone power.
And brings me to my question, Mahmud Jega. Is this all about let's attain power first and then solve the zoning question of our party later? Because as we have said repeatedly now, Article 7, subsection 3C of the PDP Constitution states clearly the matter of zoning between the North and the South. What do you mean? What do you make of this? Does it translate to that? Let's get power first and solve this later. And again, who is the biggest winner, or who are the biggest winners if the PDP does leave this open?
Well, let's be frank. The only reason why a political party exists is to try to get power. And the PDP was in power for 16 years. It was thrown out in the last 8 years. And really, if you are an active politician and a party member, your top priority over and above anything else is to get the party back in power, because it's not just the presidency. That is how hundreds or even thousands of party members will realize their own ministerial, board chairmanship, ambassadorial, heads of all kinds of executive agencies. That's the only way party members will realize their ambition. But you see, people who are studying outside the political parties, they are the ones who push this sentiment more, that let's zone, we want to have a president from the south or from the north. But if you are an active politician inside a political party, you really have a higher priority, which is to get your party back in power. Now, this thing you said about who gains, possibly it could be said that PDP as a whole has gained if the decision is to leave the race open at this stage, because really any other option might lead to the fracture of the party, and to that extent might make it virtually impossible for the party to win back power next year. So to that extent, the party has also gained. But individually, you might say, okay, the big northern aspirants, Atiku Abubakar, Bukola Saraki, Governor Aminu Tambuwal, they have gained because there was a very big effort to zone them out by zoning the ticket to the south, or more specifically to the southeast, but now they are free to contest. And I don't really see why people should be totally despondent, because the fact that the race has been left open, it's still possible for a candidate from any part of the country to still win the ticket.
If he is saying leaving it open means open for the deep pockets and the money bags. And so the man who spends the most money grabs the ticket.
If you zone it, the issue of deep pocket will still come in. If you zone the ticket to the southeast, is it everybody in the southeast that will go and get the ticket? It's only one person, and possibly one with deep pocket. So please.
Politics is a game of numbers and, of course, money, especially when you look at Nigerian politics. Dr. Sam Amadi, let me come to you right now. Some would say, you know, this whole throwing it open, it's actually a vote-catching procedure for the PDP, because let's not forget that report by Bala Mohammed after the 2019 election had suggested that it be thrown open. And of course, he is one of the aspirants really aiming for Asa Villa. But, you know, the question is, what are some of the disadvantages really for the PDP throwing, you know, the space open for everyone to really vie for that office?
I think that's a good question. By the way, the Balap report says that the zone that actually made it most northeast, where he comes from, and southeast. But he says he recommended open contest. Now, the danger that cause everything good has is on downside. The danger is that the PDP has to create a communication now to build back morale of southeast, a very captive PDP, if you like, voting group, where PDP has always had it well under Yaradua, under Obasanjo, under Jonathan. So there's a sense in which, not even among the political class, but among the electorates, that they feel that this is massive injustice against them. So both by communication, by mobilization, the PDP has to work hard to recreate a sense of win-win in the South. Clearly, this is, from a binary perspective, it's a win for the northern big guns, like Mahmud said. But the downside is that this election are going to be fought on two fronts. The APC is becoming increasingly competitive in the southeast and the south-south. So the PDP wouldn't fancy losing hold on that. They have to maximize that vote and as well do in the north. So they need to communicate well. They need to also bring some support for the southeast.
Exactly, and they need to also be looking at the winning candidate in their quest to grab power. So let's look at the aspirants that we have at the moment. For instance, those we have on the screen at the moment, the governor of Rivers, Nyesom Wike. We had Governor of Sokoto State, Aminu Tambuwal, and former Vice President Atiku Abubakar. What are the chances of former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, now that it's been thrown open, and the chances of Aminu Tambuwal and the chances of Nyesom Wike? Let me remain with you, Dr. Sam Amadi, but very quickly, because we have quite a number of aspirants to look at.
Sure. I think Atiku is always a banker, a bet. His widespread network, he has some issues dealing with people from other sections. I think Nyesom Wike, less so, will not be a very good candidate in the national politics, but be strong in the PDP primary. Tambuwal, it seemed to me, would be the best candidate in this position because of his network of acceptance, his capacity to be seen as moderate, his capacity to be seen as able to unify people, and modest, if you like, or even significant achievement in terms of running a divided assembly and managing unifying the National Assembly as Senate President, as House of Rep. So I think in the three, two people that stand out most were Atiku and Tambuwal. And Tambuwal might have an edge with acceptability in the South.
Well, you know what? Yes, Wike is not backing down because we've seen him move around, the country. It's really, seek for support. And of course, let's go to the other aspirants right there now. Looking at your screen, we're seeing the former Senate President as well as two-time Governor of Kwara State, Bukola Saraki, of course, present Governor of Bauchi State, Bala Mohammed, and of course, the flag bearer, talking about the vice presidential candidate of the PDP back in 2019, Peter Obi. Mahmud Jega, let's come to you. Looking at them, there's three, their chances really.
You see, each of these candidates, in the end, his chances depends on how much support he can mobilize and the network that he will build and the alliances that he will build. Otherwise, Senator Bukola Saraki probably has the highest visibility among these three that you have mentioned. He was a governor, he was chairman of the Governors Forum, and he was Senate President, very visible, and he also has this cultural transcendence between North and South. Governor Bala Mohammed was visible as a FCT minister during the Jonathan era, slightly less so as governor of Bauchi State. He is a fairly new entrant into the presidential race and probably cannot match Saraki. Peter Obi was the running mate. He was governor, first of all, twice in Anambra State. He was also the running mate to Atiku Abubakar in the last general election on the PDP ticket. He's also quite visible. He has maintained his visibility on the national stage. So he's also a formidable presence, although I have seen newspaper speculations that he and Atiku are probably working together to reproduce the 2019 ticket. That's the allegation.
Well,
we don't know.
The primary has been slated for the 28th of May. We'll just wait and see. And of course, let's not forget 13 candidates, that's 13 aspirants have picked up the ticket. So we'll wait and see. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us tonight on the program.